There's some controversy in the Hearthstone community surrounding Reno Lone Ranger. So in today's video, we're going to break down the positives, the negatives, and go through what I believe is the real reason why people are upset with Reno. Reno and Highlander decks have been a decisive topic among the Hearthstone community for as long as they've existed. From the very beginning, when Reno Jackson was first printed, during the last time that we had Highlander cards, during like Descent of Dragons, Rise of Shadows, and all those metagames. And now that Highlander decks are back again, we're back to having the same conversations about, are Highlander decks healthy for the game? Are they unhealthy? Are they just something that you just get mad at when you lose? So let's go ahead and take a look at the reactions that some people have had to the Reno cards, because also going to use this as a moment to say, Hearthstone, I can't even look at Reno on your website. Can't even see the card. I just see the portrait. I just thought this was really funny to point out since we're talking about Reno. But let's go ahead and take a look at the ability if for some reason you guys have not played it, or if you're just a newer player and haven't really experienced this kind of card yet. So 8 mana, 5 armor, battle cry. If your deck has no duplicates, empty the board, which is exactly how it sounds. Empty the enemy board and limit it to 1 minion for a turn. It's high noon. And you also get this hero power to where you can get 2 damage and refresh 2 mana. They're all 2 damage, so you have refresh 2 mana, gain 4 armor, deal 1 damage to all enemy minions, give a minion +2/+2 on the field, random friendly minion, discover a spell, summon a 3-cost minion, and then draw a card. Those are all the bullets that are available. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which I believe is the exact amount of hero powers that Dr. Boom had as well. So you're constantly having, you know, some good RNG, some bad RNG. Sometimes you want the armor, sometimes you want the card draw, yada, yada, yada. The hero power is not the point, but I felt like it was important to just talk about Reno as a whole in order to figure out why people seem to not like this card. And I will go ahead and say that the hero powers are not a reason why people were upset about Reno. Because with Dr. Boom, for example, a lot of people hated how powerful those hero powers were. Gaining 7 mana, feeling like it came back every other turn was a really big issue that some people had with Dr. Boom and the rotating hero powers. But the real reason why people are not having fun with Reno, at least at top legend, is due to the fact that some of the games are just really, really bad. And we'll go to that other tweet here in a second. But Zacho, the guy who runs the Vicious Syndicate podcast, said that there will not be a report tomorrow. I'm aware that there wasn't one last week before the patch, and there's another patch coming this week too. We'll most likely make a report feel obsolete quite quickly. But there's another reason why he's not making a report. There probably would have been a report if I enjoyed Hearthstone right now. He's just not enjoying the game, and I have a few reasons that I would suggest that he's not enjoying the game, because I share a lot of his sentiments, but we'll get to that here in a second. I've barely played the game since the expansion's launch. I feel so disconnected. I don't enjoy playing any of the decks. There isn't a lot of player agency, and I see it in the data too. It's fine, other players are enjoying this format, and I'm happy for them. I'll just play other games for now and use this break to re-energize. And honestly, I was reaching this point myself. At the very beginning of this expansion, for like the first 2 weeks, and even a little bit still right now, I don't like a lot of the decks that are being played right now, because it really doesn't feel like player agency has a lot to do with the outcome of the game. As simply as I can put it, it's all about drawing the right cards at the right time and being able to counter the right options with your tools, which does sound great on paper, but unfortunately, one of the things that really feels bad about Reno, at least in my opinion, is how much of a counter it is to certain strategies, and the fact that you literally cannot play around it. Now, what do I mean by the fact that you cannot play around Reno decks? Because if we take a look at a Reno deck here on ladder, the big issue that I have with Reno decks is the fact that there are 40 cards that you have to play around. So when your opponent is reaching turn 8 and you're just thinking, oh, I can just play on the fact of him not having it, there are a lot of situations to where if that does happen, you get absolutely countered and it feels really hard in order to come back from that, versus the situations to where they don't have it and you just automatically win in some instances, because there are some situations where you really need that Reno payoff. It's very similar to how Reno Jackson used to be, when you would heal up from 1 1 HP against an aggro deck, and then they just use all of their gas to be like, oh, I'm just going to pretend they don't have Reno. Then they do have Reno, they lose the game. It's very similar to that, but I would say the reason why this Reno is a little bit more frustrating is because of how easily it can counter certain decks. Like, it's a counter to Sarg, it's a counter to Restraza. All of these uninteractable cards are now actually interactable because Reno exists, and there are some people that think that is a good thing, while other people think that that is a bad thing. Again, I don't think there's necessarily a wrong or right answer. I think it really just comes down to emotions at the end of the day, and talking about how, oh, I don't like the idea of playing around a 1 in 40 or whatever the percent is of my opponent having Reno on the perfect turn that they need it. Or there are some people that actually really like that because it's all about the timing of the Reno and being able to be rewarded for saving the card for the right moment. Or if you just have it on turn 8, you just play it on turn 8 because that's what Hearthstone is. It's about curving at the end of the day. But one other thing that I really want to point out about Reno is its prevalence at top legend, and how Reno doesn't even necessarily fit into Highlander decks just by himself. There are some decks that can actually play Reno and get rewarded for it, even though it may not seem like these decks should run Reno in the first place. And there has been tons of people commenting on this, like Zacho, Jay Alexander. It all comes down to the same argument. Why are we running duplicates in Reno decks? People try this every time that Highlander payoffs are printed, and it does not work. And I actually completely disagree with this take. I completely disagree with it, and we'll get into that here in a second. A single duplicate means that you need to draw an average of 4 to 5 extra cards in order to find an active Highlander payoff. It is not intuitive, and confirmation bias makes players think that they can cheat the math. Oh, we'll just have to run a duplicate card and find in the mulligan. Highlander Druid and Descent of Dragons tried running 2 copies of Breath of Dreams. Same thing happening with a Splish Splash Whelp as well as Nourish. I can count on one hand the number of times a Highlander payoff was playable in a duplicate deck. Most likely Zephyr's decks, because it's fine if you play Zephyrs if you're drawing a bunch of cards. It's not like Zephyrs is taking up a lot of space. But yeah, it involves a deck consistently that hits fatigue as its game plan, like Holy Wrath Paladin running Zephyrs, or Warlock decks. Like there was Quest Warlock with the Tome of Origination, where it's a 2-mana hero power, you draw a card for free, and that deck was just about cycling through your deck as consistently as possible. And you would also reshuffle cards into your deck in order to draw certain cards, so there's lots of ways of being able to get rid of those duplicates. But this is where I'm going to go ahead and disagree a bit with Zacho here, because I believe there are some classes that can do it, and I do believe that Druid really is one of them right now. This is a deck, I'll move my face here. This is a deck that I played not too long ago, actually a day before the patch that we just had yesterday. And this deck actually felt like really good, even though we do have 2 Highlander payoffs in a deck with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 duplicate cards. But when you're drawing most of your deck, like, it makes sense in Druid because you're drawing a lot of cards, and that might be fitting the threshold that Zacho was talking about with some additional cards. But this deck actually does feel really solid, and this is the other problem that I have with Reno. Even though I had fun with this deck, even though I did win some games, there are some situations to where it's just gonna come down to straight up RNG and straight up luck, because if I'm playing this deck that plays tons of duplicates, my opponent's going to automatically assume that Reno is not in the deck. And then suddenly when Reno comes out and completely swaps the game in my favor, flips the board, just completely knocks my opponent off of their high horse, pun intended, because, you know, Ranger. But it's just it's unexpected. It's unexpected. It doesn't feel good, and now suddenly you have to play around the one space on the board for a turn, and that can really make an impact. And the other issue that Reno might have, that other people might have with Reno, is the fact that Restraza gets completely countered by it, and this is why some people are straight up running Fizzle in their Druid decks now. It is in this deck as well for the exact same reason. So that way you can get the second Restraza to play around the first Reno, but then if your opponent has the second Reno and their Fizzle, like, you kind of see the picture that I'm painting here. It's all about Reno. It's all about these very specific cards, and the rest of the expansion does feel like it's pretty fun, but the power level of some of these cards is just not where Reno is. And if we take a look at the data, on websites, if we look at bronze through gold, Reno is in 23% of decks as the third most popular card behind Kobold Miner, which makes sense being up here because of all the excavation decks, and even Astalor is still on top as the best card in the lower ranks. And then when we take a look at Diamond 4 through 1, Reno becomes the second most popular card in all of the game. Astalor still being on top. And unfortunately, we don't have access to the legend data. Not sure why we're not able to get this, but we're able to get the diamond data and the bronze through gold data. So we do see an upwards trajectory. And trust me, it does get a lot worse at legend because players have realized how good Reno is, even if you're not playing a Reno deck. And it's very frustrating to me. Now, this is going to be my take right here on why I do not like Reno, even though I've given you guys a little bit of my opinion so far. It just sucks to go against. That's really about it. It really sucks to go up against, and the fact that you can't play around Highlander decks because they have 30, sometimes 40 cards in their deck, like you quite literally can't play around everything. So if you have a turn to where Reno is quite literally the only option, and then your opponent has it, you're just gonna feel bad. This is not the same situation as I play a board, my opponent plays an AoE, I'm upset because my opponent played the AoE and now I can't kill them, so I have to reset up my board. There are some situations where Reno comes down and it is just game over, because you can also use Reno in a proactive way where, say you have control of the board, you play Reno, your opponent can only have one minion on the field, now suddenly their options are completely limited and you can use Reno as legitimate lethal setup, which is great for design because there's more ways of being able to play it, but that doesn't change how frustrating the card feels to go up against when you feel like it is quite literally the only card in your opponent's deck that can actually turn the game around. And some people may say that this is a good thing because Highlander decks need that kind of payoff, but I really don't like cards in general where it's like, if I hit this at the right time, I will just win the game. Like, I want there to be a little bit more agency, and that's what this argument comes down at the end of the day. It's the fact they drew Reno, it's the fact that they did it at the right time, they completely destroyed my game plan, and now I'm even more limited because I technically played my outs, but I'm not getting rewarded for it just because it came down to the one card. So one of the things we should take a look at is the actual metagame right now, because Reno decks are not on top, but I would really say that the problem with Reno that most players have is really a top legend issue. Reno is not that problematic at all of the ranks, as we can clearly see. Paladin is still freaking everywhere. I also really don't like Paladin, but I really think that a lot of people don't like Paladin right now, but it's just the go-to in order to win games. Showdown Paladin in the past 3 days, Aggro Paladin, Mech Rogue, and Rage Warrior. Earthen Paladin is even making its way up here. Dragon Druid. Finally, we get a Highlander deck with Highlander Paladin. We have Highlander Shaman, and I thought there was one other Highlander deck here. I guess Highlander Hunter, for some reason, is not popping up with the data. But if we take a look at the last day, it's still the exact same thing. Showdown Paladin, Aggro Paladin, Earthen Paladin. Best 3 decks in the game at top 1000 Legend. Dragon Druid and Rage Warrior, Mech Rogue. Finally, another Highlander deck. Aggro Demon Hunter. Highlander Druid actually comes into the fray here, because at top legend, players know what they're doing with Druid, but even then, Druid is still kind of dependent on its ramp, and that's the reason why it's so important to have those duplicates in the deck, because it's not about the Highlander payoff, it's about the ramp payoff, and that's why the deck does have those kind of cards, because it draws very consistently, and it just does its ramp game plan, and that's really what it's all about. Seeing Rock and Roll Warrior, what the hell? Okay, now this is a deck I'm going to have to look into, because if this is a good deck at top 1000, then you boys definitely got to try it. But yeah, Highlander Shaman starting to not do so well anymore. We still got Blood Death Knight, which I'm surprised this isn't Reno Blood Death Knight, because I think that Reno Blood DK might actually be the best Reno deck in all of Hearthstone right now. But yeah, Highlander Warlock, Highlander Warrior sitting at the bottom of the barrel. Makes sense. These are just not good control decks right now. But yeah, that is what I believe is going on with the Reno situation. I just really believe it comes down to the fact that it's fun to play, but extremely unfun to play against. Because one, it doesn't feel like you have much ways of being able to play around it. And it really just does come down in some situations to the fact, did they have the Reno? Yes or no? Yes, they had it. Okay, I lost. sometimes people just don't like that in Hearthstone. And again, like, I don't want this to be a video where it's like, ooh, Clark HELLSCREAM hates Reno, so therefore he hates Reno decks and he hates people that play Reno. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever. This is just not a flavor that some people enjoy, and that's absolutely fine. You're not going to enjoy every single Hearthstone metagame. And it really took me, like, 2, almost 3 weeks, damn near a month, to finally find some decks that I really do enjoy, and almost none of them have Reno except for like a few Druid decks. Like, I don't like going all in on the Reno payoff right now, just because I just personally just don't like playing the card. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I've liked every other single Highlander payoff that we've had in Hearthstone history, but this one is just not it for me. So what is your guys' opinion? Do you like Reno? Do you despise Reno? Do you think he's good for the game? Do you think he's bad for the game? Or do you think he's just the card? There are some people that don't even have an opinion on Reno, so this is the kind of fun thing about these kind of cards, to where controversies can be good for a game in order to get people talking about it. And if people are talking about Hearthstone, that means they're still passionate about it. And if they are still passionate about it, that means that they're having fun. So let me know what you guys think about Reno, because I'd love to have this kind of conversation and figure out what really is the issue here. Are we mad that we just lost, or are we mad because it feels like we don't have agency over our plays and it feels like our decisions don't matter if our opponent has the exact card that they're looking for? But regardless, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. Don't forget to check out the Patreon over at patreon.com/ClarkHELLSCREAM, to where you can get shoutouts, deck optimizations, as well as coaching. Yes, there's coaching as well. Sorry, been ranting for a little bit, lost my train of thought, but thank you so much for making it to the end of this video, and we'll see you for the next one.